Hello everybody, welcome back to Brad's movie review series. Today we will be discussing Unhinged. If you've not seen one of these, I will give you some brief information as provided by Google, the overview, some of the cast, where I watched it, other rating websites, what people thought about it from there. Just some very brief overview, some very brief thoughts. Then I will give you my grade, A being well done, B being entertaining, C being whatever, D being off-putting, and F meaning I turned off the video or left the theater. And so after I've given my grade, you're going to want to shut off the video if you've not seen it, because there will be spoilers. In my movie reviews, we do discuss the plot synopsis, plot development, any major characterizations that progress throughout the film. And so Unhinged was released in 2020. It is rated R. It is categorized as a thriller/action movie, and it has a runtime of 1 hour and 30 minutes. 6 out of 10 on IMDb, 49% on Rotten Tomatoes. Google says, Rachel is a single mother whose bad day gets even worse when she beeps her horn at a fellow driver during rush hour traffic. After an exchange of words, she soon realizes that the mysterious man is following her, and her young son in his truck. The initial case of road rage quickly escalates into full-blown terror as Rachel discovers the psychopath's sinister plan for revenge. So this one had Russell Crowe as the main antagonist, Tom Cooper, Karen Pistorius as Rachel Hunter, and Gabriel Bateman as her son, Kyle Flynn. So you have some minor characters, and Jimmy Simpson, Andy, who plays a lawyer. There's a Mary, I'm not sure who she was. There's a teacher, but then some other minor characters. So it seems, again, about 6 out of 10 on IMDb, 49% on Rotten Tomatoes. In the thriller action genre, and I really like thriller, anything that's psychological, where just, again, the writing is novel. It presents some sort of thought where I haven't seen this before, or it puts a new spin on something that I have seen before. Action is a genre that typically gets overdone for me, specifically if you just have a bunch of gore, or if you're kind of compensating for your lack of writing development with just a bunch of cutscenes, smack bang action, go 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 go. I like Michael Bay, but just huge theatrical productions as opposed to developing some sort of novel writing script. And so I did like this one. I thought I liked this one. I watched it for free on Tubi, where it is currently hosted. So for the thriller part, there's a couple sections, and I'll get to that in the plot synopsis, but I thought it could have been a little tighter. But I was thoroughly entertained throughout the movie. Again, a quick runtime, 1 hour and a half. And so overall, I'm going to give this one a B+, on the upper end of entertaining. And I almost edged it up to A-, but I'll tell you why I did not as we go through the plot synopsis. So if you've not seen the movie and would like to, there will be spoilers now. So the movie opens up and you get Russell Crowe. It's been a long day since Maximus was fighting in the Gladiator. Kind of put on a lot of weight. But Russell Crowe's character, Tom Cooper, he just walks into somebody's house and just literally hacks this dude with a hatchet, kills the guy, and then kind of implies that he kills his wife as well, and then he burns the house down. Not a super gory scene. There is gore throughout the movie, so if that's off-putting to you, because if it's well done, meaning if it's well placed and it's not just gore for gore, if it adds cinematic value to it, I like it. If it's overdone or just even not well placed, it's kind of off-putting. So the gore in this one is just neutral to me. That scene itself is not very gory. But regardless, Russell Crowe, Tom Cooper, burns down this family's house after killing them. And so then you get the intro credits, which was very similar. I was definitely thinking kind of the same type of introduction as Phone Booth, which we've reviewed in this series and discussed. But it's kind of like the producer, I don't know who the producer was of this one, or director Derek Borte. But so this is released in 2020, obviously well after Phone Booth. But it was the same type of thing where Phone Booth, the intro credits, you're talking about how a phone can ring and are you going to pick it up? And in this movie, it's, you could beep your horn at somebody in traffic and you never know, who's the crazy guy behind the wheel. So that was very similar. I definitely, was thinking explicitly to myself, this is a lot like Phone Booth's kind of discussion. being released in 2020, talking about, I don't know, some sort of commentary over COVID. It was released then, so probably COVID hadn't, the movie had probably already been made when COVID started being a thing. But regardless, a commentary on road rage. And so after the opening scene with Russell Crowe, you get Rachel. She is at her house. She's going through a divorce. She's oversleeping. Her brother and his fiance are staying with her. They're both staying at their mom's house, who has dementia, and she's kind of in this assisted living facility. And so she is a esthetician, a nail tech, or doing something with beauty, and she has to get her son to school. So I would say it did also jump out at me for the casting. Like, until they explicitly said it, I was not thinking that the Gabriel Bateman, the Kyle Flynn character, was her son. It looked like another brother. I thought they both were brothers. But that's just a casting thing that stuck out to me. Didn't detract from anything. But they're going to school, and then that's when you get into the main instigation of the whole plot. They're at this stoplight. Rachel loses one of her clients. Her main nail person calls her, and she can't make the appointment, and she loses the client. And so she's kind of motivated, kind of irritated, and she wants to get around traffic. And so they try to get off the highway, and they get at the stoplight, and that's when you get the Russell Crowe interaction. And so Rachel cuts off Tom, and Tom kind of like rolls down his window, and he's like, I'm sure you just did that on accident, premonition of what's going to happen. And she refuses to apologize, kind of tells him off a little bit. But then he asks her, have you ever had a bad day? He's like, I'm going to make sure you have a really bad day. So he goes from kind of, that commentary where it's like, politely pointing out you did something wrong to a direct threat. And so they get into some words, they exchange some words, they chase each other around, they get into an actual Russell Crowe, Tom Cooper's chasing Rachel, but she's able to avoid him and is able to drop off Kyle at school. Then she goes to get gas at the gas station. And as always, as we've covered multiple times, you cannot be caught slipping at the gas station. And so what happens? She's caught slipping at the gas station. Goes in there to get some convenience items, comes back out, or as she's going to go back out, sees Tom's car, clearly the one that she had just had this road rage incident with, following her. So a guy within the gas station offers to walk her out, get his plates if anything happens, kind of just being the other male presence around. So that guy walks out, gets his plate. There's a little mini standoff thing. But then Tom, the Russell Crowe character, runs this dude over. And so now it's very clear, he's down to do grave bodily harm. Again, the viewer has seen Russell Crowe kill that family randomly in the beginning, but our main character, Rachel, had not seen that or did not know how severe this road rage was going to be. And so now she goes to escape. She kind of does escape, but the phones get switched. Rachel has Tom's phone and Tom has Rachel's phone. And so from that interaction or from that situation, he was able to call her. She was going to meet with her lawyer over this divorce with her husband, who's either a super minor character or not in the movie at all. But so Tom shows up to where this diner where this Rachel was supposed to meet her lawyer. So the lawyer's kind of like, hey, do you know Rachel? And he's like, oh yeah, old friends. He calls up Rachel. Rachel tries to warn him that it's this crazy guy. And he literally breaks a mug on his nose. It's kind of a graphic scene. Breaks a mug on his nose and then takes a normal butter knife and stabs it through the back of his neck. And so he just kills this dude broad day right in the diner. And not super believable, but frankly, the realism of a movie, it's case by case whether it adds to the overall plot development or detracts. In my case, or for me, it was definitely a thought this broad day stabbing a dude with a knife. You kind of expect maybe a little quicker police response, but regardless, he's able to kind of just do that and then walk out of the diner and get away in his car. Point being is now Rachel does not have her phone. Tom calls his phone that Rachel has, and it's like, hey, I see your son's at school, your mom's in this nursing home, who should I go kill first? Type of deal. And so you have some leverage and dynamic going back of how she tries to tell Tom that the person, her client that fired her, she tries to put him on her trail to kind of push come to shove. I'm going to save my family. But regardless, he ignores what Rachel tells him. and goes to back to her mom's house where her brother was staying with his fiance. And so Rachel's brother picks up a knife and is like kind of like trying to fend off. Russell Crowe picks up his fiance and like thrusts her into the knife. So he kind of like forces the Rachel's brother to kill his fiance. And so that kind of happens. He douses Rachel's brother in lighter fluid, makes him call Rachel, and is like, read this note, and it's the last thing you're going to say to your sister. So he reads the note, and he gets lit on fire. And then right when that's happening, the police bust in the house, and the police officers are able to shoot him a couple times, so he gets injured. But then there's a cutaway scene, and you don't get resolution to the brother until later. But regardless, and so now I forget how they kind of meet back up, but they get back into a situation. I've kind of lost the scene progression now. But they get back where Tom and Rachel are like right next to each other in vehicles. So basically, like Rachel and her son, she's able to get him from school. They're driving away, and the son's like, we have this iPad. He might be tracking us with the iPad. So they pull up the iPad and they click the Find My Phone app, and like the signal's right next to them. So Tom had killed somebody else and he had taken her car. I think it might have been the boss of Rachel or the client from Rachel. But regardless, he's in a new minivan as opposed to his old truck. And so they're on the highway and they get into another not road rage, but like chase, a pursuit. And so this is where it bumped it down for me, because up until this point, like I said, the scene leaving the diner after he just stabbed the guy is not really believable, but it didn't take away from the writing. But leaving when Rachel and her son are able to get away from Tom, it's like they effectively go. There's some reference to her son's Fortnite strategy. Again, just some tying up a loose end of the script, kind of a little cheesy. But the point is, they're going to go back to the mom's house she's in the facility, but it's like their home turf, or they just know the building. But there's no point at this point in the movie why they would just not run away. I mean, they're in a car out of Tom's sight, and so it's like he's kind of like slowly perusing the neighborhood looking for the vehicle, which he ends up finding. He's like popping oxycodone, and the car's right there. So that scene right there was just like, this wasn't tight enough for me to bump it up into the A range. So regardless, the son goes in, what's his name? The son goes and hides in a little attic. Kyle hides in an attic. Rachel kind of finds him in the attic. There's a small kind of skirmish. And then Rachel also has these scissors, which kind of play these things that get introduced at the beginning of the movie where they're very clearly going to play a role later on. So she has like these like sewing scissors that she keeps or something, and she stabs Tom in the face with them right through the eyeball, kind of gory. But then another kind of cliche, kind of like another line that just stuck out at me, where it was over. As a competent viewer of a movie, you don't need to make things so obvious when you're tying up a loose end. But when their first road rage interaction at the stoplight, Tom had asked Rachel, are you sure you didn't mean a little double check, like a little polite honk, as opposed to slamming on your horn? And so when after she stabs him in the eye in the final scene, she goes, oh yeah, here's your double check, and then like kicks the scissors into his face and kills the guy. And so that is the conclusion. And then there's one final scene where Rachel and Kyle are once again driving away, and someone cuts them off, and she like doesn't honk the horn this time. And so overall, the conclusion was predictable, but the actual, again, just the plot development of them not just running away in that final area when he's looking for them in the neighborhood was why I kept it at a B+. But for an hour and a half movie, I was thoroughly entertained. Again, nothing super novel. It definitely seemed to me it had some inspiration from Phone Booth. But I enjoyed it. It was entertaining. I like the thriller aspect. Again, the little aspects I talked about detracting, or things that I just, when you're watching a movie and it's like, this is a thing running through my head with a couple of the scenes. So thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.